Hello. Happy Friday, everybody. It is good to see you on our last day of class, and for a big bunch of you, the last time in a long, full law school experience. You're all grown up now. So proud of all of you guys. So kind of relaxed day, but before we start to relax, that we'll also debrief a little bit from the course. I wanted to just make sure from an administrative standpoint, we're all okay with where we are. So hopefully, I'm gonna have to get my sunglasses. Hopefully you are clear on response paper 2. Quite a few of you have taken care of that, so good job. You have until I think the 30th to do so. So if you as you keep that on your radar screen, but check it off when you can. The response paper 3 site is up, so it's there to be turned in through Twins. So I know some of you have done that. That is, let's just say by the end of the day today that you'll have those if you haven't done it already. And by the end of today, I will post in the course materials for the course, the exam. So that's where you'll get it. So just go to the course materials like you get anything else, all the other readings for this course. Hold on a second. I'm gonna embarrass him. Can y'all see what he's wearing? I don't get it. He is dressed like a Jamaican bobsledder. So we went through a big Cool Runnings period, and he was never a Jamaican bobsledder for Halloween, but we built a little bobsled, and we do it in the alley behind our house. And I don't know why today he's put on the Jamaican bobsled outfit, but maybe there's some sort of costume contest at school. Yeah, feel the rhythm, feel the rhyme. It is, I don't know. It's just one of those things that happens when you have children. Like sometimes they just come out of the house wearing a Jamaican bobsled uniform. I mean, it's just the way it goes. Anyway, so I was really kind of puzzled. He was asking, he had a very important question, but still don't know why he was dressed that way. He wasn't dressed that way literally 8 minutes ago before I came onto this. So he has changed into that in the last 8 minutes. Just very, very puzzled. So what I was saying, I think, was that the exam is going to be up in the course materials for you to access by the end of the day today. You will turn it in, however, the way you turn it in will be very similar to how you turn in the response papers, except there'll be a couple of extra steps where you'll enter in your exam ID number, and I think that's all. All other than that, it's just uploading a document. Pay attention to the formatting instructions. It says something about margins and font size and page numbers, and don't put in identifying information on it. So pay attention to that. It's all there in the instructions for the exam. But are there questions about that, how it's going to go? The due date is written on the instructions as well, so there's no ambiguity about that. Everybody
so
comfortable?
Professor is it graded
Yes.
on a rubric, or how is the grading?
It is graded in kind of like a mixture of how I've graded the response papers versus how I grade traditional exams. There is a sort of maximum point value, but I'm using sort of a combination of sort of the overall quality of the response, which is kind of like the response papers, combined with some sort of accumulation of relevant points that you make over the course of your answer. There's 2 questions. Let me just make sure. The 2 questions are equally weighted, though that does not necessarily mean that you need to spend equal amounts of words on them. I think one of them, I know the exam at this point, so I think one of them will probably take more words than the other, but the questions will still be weighted equally, if that makes sense. So that means that there's a cap, right? So like each question will be worth 50 points or something like that. What else? Anything else exam wise? Hopefully y'all feel comfortable with taking it this way. I've not had problems in previous years, so I think it works. We good? All right. So really all I have for today is I'm going to just continuously break y'all into breakout groups with these quotes. So I'm hopeful that you put some thought into just picking one particular quote from the course. And what I normally do in the last day of class for this course is I select a bunch of quotes and post them on the wall around the room, and then we kind of quietly walk around and students comment. You know, you have your pen and you're supposed to write like on the quotes. It's a gallery walk, and it's you know, I think it's a really nice end of course thing that I do. Obviously can't do that exactly the same way here, so I wanted you guys to come up with the quotes. So actually, before we do anything else, I want you to type your quote into the chat so that we have the sort of full range of them. And I'm gonna do something with that, put some sort of document together with with all the quotes that you guys have picked, because I suspect that the ones that I select in a normal year are not exactly the same as the ones that you will select in this year. Emily is asking, will the lecture recordings be up the entire exam period? Yes. I'm not planning to take those down. And I don't know if you all have noticed, but I have to transfer them over from this is fun information, not really. I have to transfer them over from the Zoom because we lose those access to those recordings after 30 days, stupidly. So I've had to download them and turn them into, so I now have a YouTube channel, a Professor Keels YouTube channel. So you guys are featured celebrities in my influencer universe. If there's other questions coming in the chat, I'm going to lose them because all of the quotes are coming down. I'm just scanning through to find if there's any questions. In fact, if you're typing a question into the chat, don't raise your hand and ask the question so that I don't lose it. And I will type mine into the chat also. Let's see. There's so many to choose from. I'm going to go with this one. Okay, so I'm going to give an extra minute or so. If you haven't had a chance to put it in the chat, go ahead and do that. And then what I'm going to do is break y'all into small breakout rooms, 2 or 3 people, give you like 4 minutes to talk about your quotes, then bring you back, and then send you out into new breakout rooms, 2 or 3 people, then for 4 minutes, then come back. And we'll do that just a couple of rounds, and then we'll go along, you know, as a full group. So that's the plan for the next little while. Does that work? I guess. All right, so let's see. All right, so I'm about to create those breakout rooms for you. So again, just share your quote and why you liked it, maybe 2.5 minutes each. And then, well, I guess, yeah, if you have 3 people, you might have to be a little faster. And then we'll come back here and then we'll do it all over again. Don't join your breakout room until you have put your quote in the chat, just so we have all of those in the chat. Okay. So welcome back. Thank you for doing that, indulging me, and hopefully sharing and getting to know each other even more than you already do. I know many of you know each other very well. Anybody want to share anything about their quote now that you've done it 3 times already, to sort of elevate it, or maybe, you know, something that you heard from a quote that someone else picked? Anybody want to make that part of our discussion here as a big group?
I can go. I'm sorry, I didn't raise my voice.
That's all right. Go for it. Just a couple.
Okay,
We're
so
just looking for a couple sharers.
okay. So I will talk about the quote that I chose. I chose a quote from the article "Sowing for Desegregation in Minnesota." And the quote I chose is like really short, but I feel like it encompassed a lot of what we've learned in the course. So the truth is, an environment like Friendship Academy serves students of color much better, which is why parents choose us. And I just think that that quote and the article as a whole speaks to what we've been trying to figure out, like what is the purpose of education? You know, what role do parents have in choosing an education for their children? And is it necessary to force diversity in schools or force certain regulations, or is it just important to provide equitable quality education? In my opinion on that is that it's really just about ensuring that all students, regardless of where they choose to go to school, um, and all parents, regardless of what their economic status is to be able to have the option to send their children to a school where they feel that they're getting what they need to be successful in life. And that doesn't always mean that it's going to look diverse, but I think the goal of education should be to equip students to be able to be competitive so that if when they finish high school and enter into the workforce and into society as citizens, they will be competitive and have the opportunity to engage in diverse experiences if they choose to do that. But the problem comes where in environments of low socioeconomic status and in environments that are highly minority, that they're not receiving quality education to even be competitive or enter into different diverse experiences. So, Professor Keel, you reminded me of the quote from W.E.B. Du Bois, and I really do believe that the goal is to just provide education. It shouldn't be about forcing it to look like a certain composition of makeup based on race, but ensuring that regardless of what it looks like, everyone is receiving education.
Great, great. Thank you for sharing. Um, anyone else would like to share? I see Heather, your hand is up. Don't know if
Yeah.
you wanted to.
Yeah, I'll share.
Okay.
So my quote is from the Gary B. Sixth Circuit case. It's pretty short, but the lack of literacy of which they complain is exactly what prevents them from obtaining a basic minimal education through the normal political process. And I chose this quote because it got me thinking about, our conversations on the right to education. And I don't think that I believe in a right to education as a broad idea because it's almost impossible to test every facet of education, but literacy is the bedrock of education and it's easy to test. And with the lack of literacy, nobody can learn. I mean, I use the example in my groups about how, there's math and science people, then there's reading and writing people. My brother is a math and science person. He consistently tells me he doesn't need to know literacy. Like he doesn't read at all, but he does. Like to read a math problem, to do the math is still literacy, or to read studies for science, even though practicing science is not reading, you're still reading. And then the idea that we have going back to the beginning of class, the reason why we have education is to form a society that can participate meaningfully in a democratic process. And I mean, using the example of when African Americans were given literacy tests to make sure they couldn't vote, it's just another example of how important literacy is because they were testing for it, because without it, you couldn't vote. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you for that and for the connection to, I appreciate both of you guys making a connection back to the purpose, of education, which I think is certainly a line that I attempt to have thread through the entirety of the course. Anybody else willing to share here? Just one more quote, maybe. Y'all had some really good ones I saw in the chat. Yeah, Rachel, go for it.
Mine's not related so much to education. I just like the sassiness of it.
Okay.
It's the Justice Harlan's dissent in Plessy when he says the thin disguise of equal accommodations for passengers and railroad coaches will not mislead anyone, nor atone for the wrong this day is done. And I just really liked that he just called every single one of them out and was dramatic about it, but 100% right. And it just took 100 years for that to be acknowledged. Yeah, and I just
thin disguise,
Yeah, the very thin disguise he called him out on, and I liked that he was just a social justice warrior, and he called him out and just said it was wrong, and there's nothing more about it. It was wrong, and I like that he said it. That's all.
Great. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else itching to share?
I'll go.
Okay, great.
So I picked a quote that I don't like, just because that's my adversarial nature. The way to stop discrimination on the basis of race is just to stop discriminating on the basis of race. So obviously that's from Picks, and we talked a lot about it when we covered this. But I do think that really encapsulates like the modern movement of regressive education reform, and how this tension that we've been talking about the whole time of law and society, and like how far can courts go to reform society and propel society forward versus what society's role is to force courts to rectify social ills and problems. But I think it does show that that idea that seeping in through like we talked about with voting rights and with all different realms of, especially like Shelby v. Holder, it makes me think of that, because when they, basically gutted the Voting Rights Act, the argument was, oh, the states have done such a great job of not discriminating and not doing voter suppression. We're going to take them off the pre-clearance. And then what happens once they stopped having to be, protected federally and federal oversight, they started passing strict voter ID laws. And so the whole point, like RBG in her dissent says, it's like walking into a rainstorm without an umbrella. And so I think that quote really encapsulates this idea of at what point is the good work that you're doing to rectify and do remedial measures to fix and adjust invidious discrimination. But at what point does your stopping and saying, oh, we fixed it, by saying that, you're only dismantling all the work that you've done.
And there's a not quite as direct dissent as the one that Rachel raised, in which Harlan really calls out the majority in Plessy, but there is, I want to say I'm pretty sure it's Justice Stevens, and I think I might have mentioned this to you guys. You know, he read that comment and you know, essentially said something along the lines of, "Sweet kid, you don't know what you're talking about." No one on the court that I joined would have said something, so he didn't use the word ignorant, but it's implied, you know, that's the complexities here can't be dismissed with a clever turn of phrase.
Right.
That's Justice Stevens kind of given a lecture to Chief Justice Roberts on that particular quote. So thank you, Sarah. Any others itching? You know, it is the last day, and I'm a little bit of a sentimental guy, and so you know, I wanted to thank you guys for sort of your earnest participation in the course. I have to tell you that I'm taking like I'm getting like a special warm feeling when I'm looking at the way in which y'all are responding to each other in the response to responses, right? Like that y'all are taking that seriously. You're engaging with each other's thoughts in a really meaningful way. And so I'm reading some of the comments that y'all are giving back and forth to one another, and I'm just really impressed, and also grateful that y'all have taken, seem to have taken the course seriously, and with sort of a thirst for knowledge that I think law students have. And so thank you all very much for the semester, for this particular semester, and just for continuing to give me the privilege of being a teacher. Because at the end of the day, all of this is about education and civil rights and the K-12 context usually, but education is not just something that happens in schools, and certainly not something that just happens in K-12 schools. It happens throughout a lifetime, and I'm very, very fortunate to get to be doing that with students as a career. So I feel really, really lucky for that. And so before I totally start crying and ending the course, I do want to recognize a particularly special group of students here who have, maybe it started with a little bit of serendipity, but then it became voluntary over the course of your law school career to enroll repeatedly in my courses. So these are the recipients of the Kiel Stick, the Kiel Cycle Award for participation in all Kiel classes. And those of you who were in the other section as 1Ls, and you might be complaining of the inequity that I only allowed people who happen randomly to be put in my section as first-year students, that only they are truly eligible. I say, thank you for the courses that I have had with you, but you could have failed with Brazier and taken property, and then you would have had a stick too. So, you can come up here with your whining, but it ain't happening, right? You weren't in our section. You don't get the stick. So, I can't see. So here's one last slide for us here. And I just assure you, so normally this happens in real life, and I want to assure you that I have a stick for each one of you here, but I am going to read your names. And I usually have a certificate. And so I'm committing that before you graduate, you will get a stick in person And if for some reason you have already left Memphis and aren't coming back before graduation, then we'll figure some way out to get a stick and certificate to you. So this year, and every time I do this, and this year may be worse than most because there's quite a number of you, I am just horrified, fearful that I'm going to leave someone off this list. So if you are that person, I've never done it before, but it's always possible. If you are that person, make it known and shame me into because there's a few of you that I thought were, but you didn't take con law. So anyway, so I'm going to sort of clap for each of you as I say it. So Taylor Hudson, Shelby Bess, Reggie Eskridge, Alex Holloway, Rebecca Hutto. You know what? I see it on the roll. What is it? Hutto?
Hutto, yes.
Hutto, okay. Sarah James, Asia Moulinar. How about that one? Did I get that one right?
Yep, you got it right.
All right. You know, it's funny because all of these names, they're, you know, I've been seeing the name for however long I've been seeing the name, and it's always existed in my mind, but I don't know that I've ever said it out loud. Lindsay Castellaw, how about that one? Is that right? Castellaw? I don't know. What do we got? Is she even here? Well, oh yeah, we have to wait for her. I forgot.
Can you
Maybe
hear me now?
Yeah, yes. Did I say it right?
Yeah, Castellaw.
Castellaw, I got it. Okay. Takesha Johnson. I think I got that one. John Taylor, but really Jake Taylor, who didn't tell me that he goes by Jake for the longest time and allowed me to continue to call him John. So Jake Taylor, Caleb Waldrop, Ashley Courtney, Rachel Moore, Chelsea Wilson, Chris Blodgett. Is that right with the pronunciation, Chris?
Yes, good. You got it.
Great. Haley Cambron or Cambron, I don't know. Which is it? Haley?
It's Cameron. You're good.
Cambron,
You're right.
Cambron, I got it. Trust yourself, Daniel. Marion Ragland, Jonathan Warren, Kierica Banks, Caitlin Dagan, Renee Graves, and Jake Stoner, all individuals who took Property 1, Property 2, Con Law, and now Education and Civil Rights. So to those of you, a special thanks as we end the semester. And to all of you, a huge thanks for being excellent participants in this course, which was a little different than I usually do it, not only because it was online, but because it's much larger than usual, at least probably more than double the normal size. And I actually thought that was helpful for the course. And so I was fearful of having a lot of people, but we all put all my fears away, right? So I had nothing to fear. So I am I'm done, right? So that's the class. I'm gonna stop the recording, and if you want to hang out, let's hang out. If you don't, then have a great weekend, exams, etc. You'll find our final here on Twin. We good? Thank y'all.
Can you tell us who owns the watch for real?
Who owns the watch for real?